Matthew in California is calling in to say that he's voting third party and writing in Cornel West, and that he thinks there's value in a protest vote.
Hello, Matt. Hello, Eve. How are you?
Good, how are you?
You're irritated as all get out.
Understandable. So my reasoning there is I think there's a few issues, including the genocide right now in Gaza and Palestine.
How does voting for Cornel West help that?
It's not directly going to do that, but I think there's value in a protest vote, and that it sends a very small one-person-sized message that
no, it doesn't.
Is not okay.
Message to who?
It sends a message that you're clueless because you're voting for someone who isn't even on the ballot in enough states to get elected. You are literally throwing away your vote, and you think that it does something.
Matthew, I'm genuinely curious. What do you actually think it's going to accomplish? Do you have this large audience and you're telling them, hey, I'm not voting and this is why, and you're hoping that this will draw attention to it? I'm trying to understand what this does by not voting.
I recognize he's not going to win. I know that, the president is going to be either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. And I agree that I vastly prefer Kamala Harris over Donald Trump for all the reasons you've been discussing. But I live in California. California is going to go for Kamala Harris.
Not if every Californian starts thinking like you, it doesn't. If enough Californians start thinking like you, that can drain votes away. It's called the spoiler.
I see what you're saying. But if I applied that logic, like somehow everyone's going to start thinking like me, if we applied that whole thing, well, then we wouldn't be locked into a two-party system. But I don't think it's reasonable to think that.
No, if you applied, what if everybody acted like me? You'd come to the conclusion that the best thing you can do is to support the better candidate that has a chance.
I think if everyone voted for him the same way I did, Cornel West would be president. But
no, they wouldn't, Matthew, because Cornel West is not on the ballot in enough states. Cornel West is not going to get enough. Even if everybody went and voted for him, he can't be president.
I just have a question.
I agree he's not going to be president.
No, not going to be, cannot be. You are literally voting for someone who cannot get enough electoral votes because they're not eligible. They're not even on the ballot.
Yeah, and so Matthew, I'm just curious. I don't know if you heard earlier me talking about how I've had an ectopic pregnancy. Abortion rights are very important to my immediate health. And how are you okay with someone like me having that right taken away? To the extent that you say well, it's a protest vote, but that's what you're doing by throwing away a vote in that manner. You're saying that you're okay with the potential outcome of Donald Trump becoming president. To the point that you would rather make a statement, as you're saying, or a protest vote, than actually put some action to preventing that from happening.
I'm not okay with that. And
you are kind of, because the house is on fire and the rest of us are picking up buckets, and you don't like the fact that the buckets were bought at the dollar store where people were exploited overseas. And so you're going to stand off to the side with a garden hose that's not plugged into anything and pretend like you're doing something when you're not.
I agree the house is on fire, and I am trying to listen to people like what you've just said, and that it is a good reminder. It is.
Thank you.
Donald Trump.
I really appreciate that.
And I'm really trying to listen to you guys. That's a really good point. I'm quite confident that California is going to go for Kamala Harris. And Matt, I heard what you said earlier.
Then vote for her, just in case.
Who do you think is going to see your protest vote and
no one? My name is an attachment vote.
Who do you think is going to see your protest vote and put any value on it at all? What percentage of the people who even know about your protest vote are going to think you're anything other than clueless?
I don't share my vote with the random person. So that's not what I.
So you're gonna vote for Cornel West, and you're not going to tell anybody about it. So you're throwing your vote away as a protest because you think protest votes are important, but nobody's going to know about your protest vote, which makes it not important.
is there not some value in seeing that there was a significant group of people that didn't vote for one of the two main parties?
The
No,
significant
no,
value is that I have a
that's
group of
always the
people I
case.
can be pissed at when my rights are taken away
Yeah.
from me and say, why weren't you
I'm
there?
thinking
Why didn't
about-
you do something?
I'm thinking about what Eve just said, and I think that's a really good point, that since I do live in California, I do see my vote as a protest vote. I think it also matters that there are people, and I recognize I'm not one of them. I'm living a fairly privileged life here. I'm not one of the people who's facing an existential threat if Donald Trump
Right.
is president. And I know that other people are. I think you make a really good point that a vote is a vote for that too. And
Yeah.
I mean, the Israel-Palestine thing does really bother me. I've been reading.
It bothers me
about that and
too.
listening to people, and it hurts me to see it. But
Yeah.
I do understand what you're saying, and that there's immediate things that are happening right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate you hearing me out on that. And it matters to me what's happening in Gaza and all kinds of places all over the world. And as an activist, I want to stay alive and have the autonomy to be able to actually keep working toward making changes that help people like that. And I want to prevent things like that from happening here where I already live. And I need to have bodily autonomy in order to do that. So I have to vote against the person who wants to take that away from me. And I think that it sounds like, I appreciate you hearing me out. It sounds like you and I are very much on the same page when it comes to that. And I think your vote does matter. And I think it is valuable. Even if California is going, it's important for people to think about this and think, okay, how do you want to protest with your vote? Why don't you do it in a way that has action to it and actually could impact something and is helping? And at least you can say that you were one of the ones that helped stand behind people like me and said, it does matter what happens. It does matter what the outcome is. And I recognize that even if it doesn't impact me, and I cared enough to do something about it.
Yeah, I was going to say that if I lived in Pennsylvania, I'd crawl across the country to vote for Kamala, but I actually think you're convincing.
Thank you.
I think that's convincing. I'm going to vote for Kamala if I feel that strongly about it. I really
have made my entire night.
But
Okay.
I think it's a good point.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks. I
jump
really
back in.
appreciate it.
So, Matthew, side note, I would love for someone at some point in the future, and you seem to be kind of leaning that direction, but we're not going to get into it more tonight. I would love for someone to explain to me how and why and when a protest vote has any effect at all. Because
okay.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to dig in. I got one more call to get to, and then we got super chats to get through tonight. But genuinely, I sit here and I'm like, if you vote for Cornel West or Mickey Mouse, neither of those says anything. Like, I don't know why people voted for Cornel West. Is it because they were upset about Gaza? Is it because Kamala is more in favor of gun rights than Cornel West is? I have no idea what any supposed protest voters' objection is. I just know that they didn't vote for anyone who could possibly get elected. And to me, it sends a message that they either don't understand the system or they don't understand how a protest vote could possibly be.
That's what kind of just changed my mind. I feel like it sends a message to vote for Kamala too. And
during the primaries, everybody vote your fucking conscience. Pick your favorite candidate that you can get in the primaries. But what if people use the same logic in the primaries that they used in the general election, where, oh, I don't have any candidate that I like in the primary, so I'm not going to vote? That's actually what tends to happen. But I think more people don't vote in primaries because they just aren't involved enough to give a shit. Maybe that's the solution. Maybe, and I'm advocating for this so that we can all think about it and have discussions. If we drive voter turnout to the primaries in such a way that it rivals the turnout for general elections, I think that could make real improvements to the system, because nobody but diehards shows up for primaries. Everybody that's going to vote tends to show up during the general elections. It's still only 2/3 of the population or so, maybe a little less. But the biggest voter turnout is always in the general election when there's in a year with a presidential debate. If we can get people to turn up and vote every year, voting locally, voting in the primaries, all of a sudden the primaries improve and the primaries become a better representation of the people who are participating in it. Because right now, there aren't enough people participating in the primaries for it to be representative of anything. And that's how you get the conspiracy theorists saying that the president was picked by the Jews. And so I think over the next 4 years, no matter who gets elected, we should have a primary push for primaries. Your primary focus is on the primaries, because that's when you say, hey, look, I like Gary Johnson. I like, Jill Stein, despite the fact that she's probably just a puppet of Russia. You go down and you pick out, that's kind of a half joke based on some reporting today. I realize not everybody read the same thing that I read, but it's funny because she ran in 2016 and then she didn't run in 2020. And then now she's running again. And so there's other people making the argument that she's just basically a Russian spoiler against the Democrats. And that's why she didn't run in 2020, because Trump would have potentially drawn away from Trump. But anyway, it's not necessarily true. I got completely derailed. Let's focus. Let's make the primaries our primary starting next year.
Yeah, and
Matt,
one thing I think we'll agree on here is please get involved with your local school district if you're at all interested in that. I've been going to some of those meetings recently, and for the most part, the kind of people going there, yikes. So we need more people going there.
Before we let you go, Matthew, I just want to say thank you for being willing to actively change your mind on air. It could have been easy for you to just hold your ground and then get off air and decide whatever. But I really appreciate that you were willing to have that conversation and say something. I think hearing this conversation will help other people as well. So thank you for just being honest in the way that you engaged with us. Unfortunately, that's kind of rare around here, and I appreciate it.
To be honest, I was partially on the fence before the call. I just wanted to make as strong of a case as I could, but it definitely changed my view. Like in the point I have conviction now on what I'm going to do.
Thanks. I will say it's a lot easier to make a case for Cornel West than almost anybody else you could write in. You're the second one who's advocated for Cornel West this week, which is why I had already looked into Cornel West and where he was.
I did actually hear that call.
Sweet.
And Matt, I talked to you on air real quick. I talked to you on air about 3 months ago, and presented a argument for God from intuition, and you didn't convince me over the air. But in the subsequent months, I realized that what I thought didn't make sense. And one of the things you said in particular really stuck with me, which is, do you apply this logic to anything else in your life?
Oh, yeah.
And I recognized on the air that was inconsistent, and it actually did move my position later when I had more time to think about it.
That's amazing.
Well, thank you so much for telling me, because after 20 years of doing this and getting emails from thousands of people, which I don't have access to, so fuck you, Vern, but getting emails from people, it's very rare that anybody can pinpoint, here's the thing that was said that changed my mind, whether it's about religion or voting or whatever else. Not everybody bothers to do that. And not everybody, I think, even knows. It may just kind of be like, yeah, I just kind of thought about it some more and stuff made more sense this way and didn't make more sense. So it's kind of nebulous. So finding out what I said that was useful, I might repeat it. So thanks, Matthew.
Yeah, it was good luck. Thank you, folks. Thank you, Ian.
Thanks. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Hey, do you think this clip just fell out of a coconut tree? No. It did. Okay, now technically I did build the channel into a coconut tree and it did fall out. And also that our internet router is up there. Actually, in a lot of ways, this production fell out of a coconut tree, but we could only afford that because people like you supported us for $5 a month over where is that, Eric?
Patreon.com/call the line, and
that's right.
Jimmy will,
you got it.
Yeah, be grateful. Yeah.
We have an exclusive patron podcast over there. Check it out. Thumbs up with it, Eric. We talked about this in the meeting. We have to both.
Oh,
thumbs
yeah.
up.
Sorry. Okay, there we go.